W październiku tego roku w Warszawie miałam przyjemność gościć doktora Roberta Hogana, ikonę psychometrii amerykańskiej, twórcę narzędzia psychometrycznego. Narzędzia, które stworzył dr Robert Hogan, pozwalają przewidywać sukcesy menadżerów, czy oni będą odnosili sukcesy w danej organizacji, w danym miejscu pracy, w danym środowisku. Te narzędzia również pokazują ich motywy, wartości, preferencje, czyli wszystko to, co ich motywuje, dlaczego z uśmiechem na ustach rano wstają i chcą przychodzić do pracy. Tak naprawdę jesteśmy w stanie powiedzieć, jaką kulturę organizacyjną menadżerowie będą tworzyć w swoich zespołach, ale również badamy ciemną stronę mocy, czyli wszystko to, co utrudnia im osiąganie sukcesów, wszystko to, co utrudnia im rozwój ich kariery. Mogę powiedzieć z całą pewnością, że wśród badanych menadżerów przez nas narzędziami psychometrycznymi doktora Hogana 90% z nich nie ma pojęcia o tym, co przeszkadza im odnosić sukcesy w organizacjach. Z doktorem Robertem Hoganem będę rozmawiać o tym, jak wyłaniać dobrych menadżerów, jak wyłaniać i poszukiwać nowe talenty, czyli hype. Czy należy awansować tych ludzi, których znamy, których lubimy, czy być może są wśród organizacji nieodkryte perły. Będziemy również rozmawiać o tym, kto jest dobrym liderem, kogo postrzegamy jako dobrego lidera. Również będziemy zastanawiać się nad tym, czy lepszymi liderami są kobiety, czy też mężczyźni. Jeżeli to Państwa interesuje, zapraszam do wysłuchania wywiadu z doktorem Robertem Hoganem.
When I was young, I read Freud, and I was fascinated by the concept of the unconscious, the idea that you would do things for reasons that of which you were unaware and for reasons that you didn't understand. Things you would be doing things for acting in ways that you thought were perfectly normal, but in fact were being controlled by other factors of which you were unaware. I spent a lot of time thinking about all that, and I think the notion that people often do things for reasons they don't understand is true. I think Freud's explanation for that, it's called the concept of repression, makes no sense. And that's where, so my notion of the dark side is just that this has to do with people doing things for reasons they think are valid and for reasons that they never examine. So the bright side is how we're behaving right now. The bright side refers to behavior when people are paying attention and being socially appropriate. The dark side refers to behavior when people are just not thinking, when they're not. And when does that occur? It occurs usually when you're talking to your dog, or in the case of a boss, when you're talking to a subordinate. When the dark side is when it occurs when people are just being themselves, and when they're being the real you. And my view is that the real you is something you should be ashamed of. Because the real you so it's just the kind of childish impulses that you learn, childish behavior you developed as a kid and you don't think about and so forth. And then but the real point about the dark side is about 2/3 of all managers fail, and they fail for the same reasons. They fail for about 11 reasons. You can catalog these reasons. And they don't know what they're doing when they do it. I mean, they think they're behaving naturally and normatively or appropriately, and in fact they're just making big mistakes in the way they treat other people. They yelling to try to get people's attention, lying, self-dramatizing, and anyway, the dark side is you when you're just being yourself, and you probably need to be aware of that. The HR view, the party line view, the conventional view, and then there's my view. And the party line view is leadership is anyone who's at the top. If people are at the top, then by definition they're leaders. So Donald Trump is the leader of the free world. Well, that would be, I mean, that's sort of but in my view, leaders have nothing, in my view, people get to the top of organizations or companies or businesses or military. People get to the top many times for political reasons, not for reasons that have to do with performance. In my view, the best analogy, the best metaphor for leadership is a sporting team. A leader is a person who can build a winning team. And if you want to understand leadership, just go look at the top coaches of top football teams. They're all leaders, and the players that play for them say they are. And so I don't know. In the United States, there's a very famous football team called the New England Patriots, and every player who's ever played for the Patriots said the coach, whose name is Belichick, said it's the best leader they have ever worked for. You've had bad coaches and you've had good coaches. Yeah, so I think leadership is about the ability to build and maintain a high-performing team. Leadership should be defined in terms of the ability to build a team. Leadership should be evaluated in terms of the performance of the team. And, and many times those guys, the really good, highly effective coaches, they're often humble. They're not self-dramatizing and self-promoting. They're often the exact opposite of someone like Donald Trump. You can only become a leader if you're put into a leadership position, and when you find yourself in a leadership position, if you have potential, it'll emerge, and if you don't, it won't. So, but we can assess potential. We can tell you in advance. We can tell you in advance, this person is going to be a good leader. This person is going to be a mediocre leader. This person is going to fail. And even when they're good leaders, we can tell you what problems they're going to have. And if they're bad leaders, we can tell you what they should fix in order to change their game. There's a real difference in what people need to do at the different levels in an organization. New entry-level first-line managers actually need real leadership skills. They need the same leadership skills as a coach. First-line managers are responsible for implementing the tasks of the organization. They have to build a team. They have to get a team to work and do things. Middle managers have to take ideas from the top and sell them to the first-line managers, and many times those ideas are flawed, and the staff will say that's a crazy idea. So the middle manager has to sell crazy ideas to, and then has to justify the performance of the team back to the people at the top. So first-line managers have to be real leaders. Middle managers have to be diplomats. They have to work back and forth between unfriendly agencies. People at the top. So first-line managers actually need leadership skills. Middle managers need diplomatic skills. People at the top, very often, I mean, someone like Steve Jobs, I mean, they just parachute into the top. And so they don't, and the job at the top is strategy. It's figuring out what to do and who should do it. It's all about strategy and judgment. And for that, you don't need leadership skills and you don't need diplomatic skills. You just need analytical skills, really. And so you can be a very good top level, someone like Steve Jobs was very smart about products and product placement. He was a terrible manager. And the organization basically had to build structures around him to keep him from terrifying the workforce. So, so at the top you need vision and analytical skills and strategy. At the middle level you need diplomacy. At the bottom level you need, that's what the real leadership is, at the bottom level. Where it really matters is at the bottom level. I do like that line, winners win and losers lose. It's true. I mean, people who win, if they're good at this, they'll be good at that, they'll be good at that. You watch these guys, they're just successful wherever they go, and other people just fail and fail and fail and fail. And so if you take a person who's been a successful salesperson in the automobile industry, they'll be able to do real estate, or they'll be able to do, you know, what we do. But how do I account for the success of people like Jobs? And I think it's a really, that's the question I'm most interested in. How do you account for their success? And I think the answer is, first of all, they're quite smart, and smart in a practical way. I mean, there's a lot of people with high test scores are not very smart, but these guys are smart in a functional way, and they have a strategy, and it's a correct strategy, and they know how to implement the strategy. They have enough talent to recruit like-minded people, and the rest of the people can then build out the organization. Because these guys are not, I think these guys are not leaders. They're just sort of strategists and visionaries who see opportunities, and then they're able to sell a vision and a program, and then other people line up, and then the implementation takes place down here. And I'm sure that in the case of Apple and in the case of Microsoft, early on there would be terrible problems at the implementation level, because these guys are not about implementation, they're about setting direction. high potential identification these days is an HR fad. Everyone's interested in it. But it turns out that the German army, the German military psychologists in the 1920s developed the modern assessment center as a methodology for identifying high potential leaders before they actually get in the job. So the process of high potential identification has been around for 100 years. It's just become of interest to HR people in the last 10 years. So that's the first thing. Is that my first point is that people have been doing high potential identification for 100 years. And they've been doing it well. Smart people have been doing it well for 100 years. Then the problem and then to do it correctly, there's a very interesting study by, doesn't matter, from the 1980s, very careful study of management performance, studied almost 500 managers in a variety of different organizations for 3 years. And at the end of that time, we found that there were two groups of managers. There was one group of managers were people who were getting rapid promotions and rapid pay raises and were going like this. And the second group of managers had high-performing teams. The first group of people who were succeeding rapidly, and the second group were people who were running effective operations. And the bad news is they were not the same people. They only overlapped about 10%. And they spent their time very differently. So the first group, the people who were getting rapid raises and promotions, spent their time networking, spent their time doing politics, spent their time on the phone all day. The second group, the people who had high-performing teams, spent their time working on their teams, working with the teams and on the teams and fixing, the kind of problems that you had to fix with teams. Well, I mean, and so the organizations need to ask themselves, who are they? I mean, the second group are the people who are actually making money for the organization. The first group are making money for themselves. Organizations have to ask themselves, what do you want? You want someone who's going to look out for himself, or you want someone who's actually going to make money for the team? And the second group, first group is characterized by self-promotional tendencies, by social skills, by being real talent for networking. Second group's characterized by talent for leadership. And it's not the same thing. The second group are people who tend to be humble, who tend to be understated, to prefer to let their work speak for itself. They're the real high potentials, but organizations typically pick as high potentials the guys who are really good at self-promotion. And it's huge financial consequences. The fact that it's these guys, the self-promoters, who are rapidly promoted into management, I mean, that accounts for the 65 to 70% failure rate in managers. They're putting the wrong people into, Well, that's right. I mean, if you have a real high potential, there are people who have the flexibility to move. They can gain employment elsewhere. The key to high potential retention, the key to retaining high potentials is engagement. Is actually good leadership. Good leadership. What good leadership does is create engagement. Gets people to work. That's what engagement means. You're willing to work hard for the organization and go beyond the necessary. So the key to high potential retention is to get them engaged, to expose them to really effective leadership. We are almost an engineering company. We're very database. We don't do everything we say or do is based on real numbers. We actually know what the characteristics of a good leader or boss are. There are 4 characteristics that you have to have. Good boss is defined as someone whose team performs effectively. Senior people typically know who they like. They don't know who their good leaders are. They know who they like, but they don't know who's actually doing a good job for them. So if you want to know the characteristics of a highly effective leader, you have to ask the subordinates. You have to ask the team. You can't ask the people up here because they don't know. So you ask the team, and the team subordinates, what people want to see in their leaders. They want to see 4 things, and they have to see these. And otherwise, the first thing that a person needs as a leader is to be perceived as having integrity, as being honest, as telling the truth, as not playing favorites, as not self-dealing, as not exploiting the organizational resources for his own benefit. The first thing people need is integrity. Tell the truth, keep your word, follow up, don't play favorites. Be a reliable, honest, dependable person. You'd be surprised how often that doesn't happen. So, and one time they catch you lying, you're done forever. That's why so many politicians are not good leaders, because they lie for a living. And you know, how do you know when a politician is lying? When his lips are moving.
That's good.
Yeah. So first thing people want to see in a leader is integrity, and that's where many politicians have problems. Second thing people want to see in a leader is good judgment. Do you know? Can you make solid, dependable judgments, or are you erratic and flawed in your decision making? And my example of this is the Vietnam War, the United States War in Vietnam. 6,000 junior officers were killed by their own troops because the troops knew they were making bad decisions, and their decisions were going to get the troops killed. It's, you know, he's going to get us killed. We need to take care of this. So troops, the staff always know if the boss makes good decisions, and if they make bad decisions, if it's in the military, they're liable to. Okay, so need integrity, need good judgment, and then the third thing a manager needs is they need to know what they're talking about. I mean, they actually need competence in the business. They need to understand what's going on at the shop floor and understand the business in detail. You know, and historically, managers came from below and worked their way up. But since the 1970s, we have something called the MBA and the cult of the MBA. And the idea of the MBA is you'll learn you acquire a body of formal knowledge that makes you a leader by definition, and you don't need to know what's going on at the shop floor because you know all these other things. You know finance, you know law, you know whatever it is they learn in an MBA program. Well, I mean, then you got a guy in the leadership position that doesn't know what he's talking about, which means the staff can lie to them, can deceive him, you can't hold anybody accountable. If you're the boss, people are going to be coming to you all day long asking for advice. How do I do this? How do I do that? You have to be the coach. And if you don't know the business in detail, I mean, the reason Bill Belichick is the best football coach in the United States is he just knows football better than anybody else. He's just more competent. So that's the third character. First, you need to have integrity, no lie. Second, you need to have good judgment. Third, you need to know what you're talking about. And it's amazing. I mean, someone like Barack Obama had no clue what he was. He had no clue what he was. He'd never had a job. He'd never done anything. He just got elected, and so now he's in charge. He didn't know what to do. And then the last thing is, for effective leaders, is they have to be able to project a sense of vision. They have to be able to tell you why we're doing this and why it matters. They have to make sense out of the job as opposed to just. And so, integrity, good judgment, competence, and a sense of purpose and vision. And that's it. And if you have that, engagement will follow, and team performance will follow. It's difficult to get organizations to listen to us. If organizations will listen to us, they make much better hires. If they don't, they'll make a lot more money. So the problem is not, do we know how to find good ones? Absolutely. Can we get organizations to listen? No. Well, I think people are biological. We're biological. We're animals. We're biology. We're a million years. People are about 1 million years old. People exactly like us have been around for 200,000 years. So the fundamental relationships between people are determined by biology. I think the characteristics of a leader will always be the same. It doesn't matter how much this digital is just noise. I mean, you know, the technological change has been going on since Galileo, and this is just the next stage in it. I don't think but it won't change the facts of leadership. Leadership is about, can you trust these guys? Are they going to make good decisions? Do they know what they're talking about? And you know, do they have a correct view of the future? First, you can see what your profitability was at time 1, and then you can see what your profitability is at time 2. That's it. Are you making more money now, or less? Yeah. And the answer, and the personality of CEO accounts for more variance in firm performance than any other factor except the industry sector in which the organization is located. CEO's personality accounts for somewhere between 17 and 24% of the variance in firm performance. So you just measure firm performance or unit performance at time 1, unit performance at time 2, and boom. So that's the first answer. Second answer is that's often very hard to do, but it turns out that the degree to which the staff trusts the leader is a proxy for performance. So if you can't measure how well the term's actually performing dollars and cents, you can evaluate how much the staff trusts the leader, and that'll give you a second best estimate. Staff measures of the degree to which they trust their leader correlate very highly with actual empirical performance. we have developed a high potential, a tool, a device for identifying high potentials. And, and I talk about the good news and the bad news. Good news is that our methodology for identifying high potentials works. It's colorblind, it's gender blind. Men get the same scores as women, minorities get the same score as majority. So it's a perfectly fair, colorblind, impartial way of identifying high potential. And organizations won't like that because inside the organization there's a lot of politics. So if they use our objective, validated, empirical method for high potential identification, women and minorities will get the same scores as white men. And then politics go away. And the company makes more money. I don't know if there's any data to understand that one way. It sounds to me like it's something that HR people like to do. I'm not sure that providing that is. I'm not even sure that there's a characteristic. There's a real concept called millennial. I think people are just people. So I'm not persuaded. And so there are lots and lots of HR fads, and that just sounds like another HR fad. Well, I'm a numbers guy. So we have our way, which is traditional psychological assessment. We have our way of identifying high potentials. They've got their way of identifying high potentials, right? Let's have a horse race. let's take the same 50 people. We assess them, they assess them. We compare the results. I mean, you have a car, I have a car. You say your car is faster than my car. How do we tell? We go race. You say your method is better than my method. How do we tell? We go race. It's just, and I like to compete. And we have done that, and we never lose. Well, I mean, hopefully the digital world will lead people to be more empirical, to pay more attention to data when they're making their decisions. And the role for HR is to get on board with understanding database decision making. I mean, that's the most important thing they can do. Historically, they haven't done that. Digitalization just makes it possible to gather more data and to make, in principle, make better and more refined decisions. Better decisions meaning, you know, I say he's going to be good, he turns out to be good. I say he's going to be bad, he turns out to be bad. That's a good, and I would think the role for HR is to get on board with database decision making as enhanced by the big data that are available through digital processes. Well, you know, I could say something serious. I mean, there's a Polish identity, there's a Polish culture, and I think values are the most important thing in organizations. And I think, you know, I think the big advice would be true to your values. Don't try to behave like Americans. You know, those people in Silicon Valley are crazy. Understand what's good and valid about Polish culture, and make sure those values are embedded preserved and embedded in the organizations. I really believe that. Two-thirds of all the CEOs in the United States are going to be gone in 2 years. Okay, 3 years.
Probably
it'll be the same. Yeah, and it'll be the same in Europe.
Because
They're getting promoted based on the degree to which they're skilled at networking. They're not getting promoted based on how well their team performs. Oh, well, I mean, there are going to be differences rooted in values, but good leadership is good leadership. I think Angela Merkel's the best politician in the world. And I think that Mr. Macron is going to be very good as well. The poor old Italians, I don't know what we're going to do for them. Yes, I think she's the best political leader in the world. And she's, you know, she's out in front. She's done some things that people don't like, but she did them for the right reasons. And I mean, I think her policy on immigration was correct, and she just was unable to sell that correctly. It's made her really unpopular. We were just in Germany talking to some very smart people who think she made terrible mistakes on that, but I thought she did. And then she supported Greece, not because she was, but because she wanted to keep the EU together. And that's a leadership position. Being a real leader means taking unpopular positions. She's a real leader.
And she's a woman.
And she's a woman, yes. I think she's really smart. I'm a great admirer of Angela Merkel.